Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome everyone. MashaAllah, people are still joining, so we're just going to give it a couple minutes, inshallah, and then we will welcome our dear physicians, inshallah.
I'm just going to put it.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Again, welcome everyone. Alhamdulillah. Thank you for joining this special program, this very much needed program. Dr. Na'il Muhaysin, welcome. I can see you. Thank you for accepting our invitation. And Dr. Naeem, I believe she's with us as well. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. For our dear physicians and for everyone, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Yes. So people are still joining. We can get started anyways, bidnillah. The video is also being live streamed on YouTube. Right now it's being recorded. So if you know anyone who's having trouble to join the Zoom meeting, you can just tell them to go to the MyDeen page. And we did not send out the YouTube link. We sent it out just in a very limited way because we wanted people to join Zoom and ask their questions. We want to make this more engaging. We want everybody to have the courage to ask the questions, inshallah, because you know, this kind of event happens once in a while. Alhamdulillah. So let me welcome Dr. Na'il Muhaysin and Dr. Fuzia Naeem. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على النبي الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Alhamdulillah, mashallah, our dear physicians, they are a dear Muslim brother and sister as well, and they are within our community. And mashallah, they have a very rich background, experience. And I will start with introducing Dr. Na'il Muhaysin. Dr. Na'il Muhaysin, mashallah, is a board certified in pediatrics and pediatric infectious diseases by the American Board of Pediatrics. Dr. Na'il Muhaysin joined Valley Children's as a pediatric infectious diseases specialist in August 2015. He has a special interest in infections in immunocompromised patients. Dr. Muhaysin is a member of several professional societies, including the American Academy of Pediatrics, the Infectious Diseases Society of America, the Pediatric Infectious Diseases Society, and the American Medical Association. Dr. Muhaysin received his medical degree from the University of Damascus in Syria. MashaAllah, you know, Syrian physicians are very well known with their success and contribution to this country, MashaAllah. And then he did his pediatric residency at Children's Hospital of Michigan, Wayne State University in Detroit, Michigan. He completed his pediatric infectious diseases fellowship at St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital in Memphis, Tennessee. During the fellowship at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, Dr. Muhaysin participated in several hospitals. Dr. Muhaysin participated in several research projects focusing on gastrointestinal infections in pediatric oncology patients and immunocompromised children. Allow me just to mute everybody. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Okay, now we should be fine. Welcome, Dr. Muhaysin. Thank you for joining us tonight. And I will also introduce Dr. Fouzia Naeem. Dr. Fouzia Naeem, mashallah, is also a board certified. She's a colleague of Dr. Nail Muhaysin. She's a board certified in pediatrics and pediatric infectious diseases. Dr. Fouzia Naeem joined Valley Children's Hospital, pediatric infectious diseases specialist in July 2012. Dr. Naeem has published in peer-reviewed publications such as Journal of Pediatric Infectious Diseases. Her main research has been determining the role of inflammatory markers in differentiating bacterial and viral community-acquired pneumonia in hospitalized immunocompetent patients. A sub-study of a multi-center Centers for Disease Control and Prevention etiology of pneumonia in the community study. She has also done a retrospective study in distinguishing intrathoracic masses of infectious origin and malignant masses in a histoplasma endemic region. MashaAllah. So there's a big academic contribution from both our physicians, MashaAllah. Dr. Naeem received her medical degree from Sindh Medical College in Karachi, Pakistan. She completed a pediatric internship in Pakistan as well. And then she also completed another pediatric internship and residency at Elmhurst Hospital, affiliated with Mount Sinai Hospital, very well-known hospital in New York City. She did a fellowship in pediatric infectious diseases at the University of Tennessee, St. Jude Children's Research Hospital as well in Memphis, Tennessee. She also obtained her master's degree in epidemiology from University of Tennessee Health Science Center. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. So we see a very rich background, very experienced, and we are very much needing to hear from our specialists on this. We've been hearing a lot of rumors. A lot of people, unspecialized people, are talking about people that have nothing related, in their life to the medical field, and they are talking about the vaccines. And some people are even scaring people or warning people from the vaccines. So is that a reality? We need to hear from academic people. We need to hear from people who are actually in the heart of the field, at the core of it. And they can, inshallah, share with us their experiences and give us advice, because I know we are living in such very uncertainty time and fear. People, were fearing the COVID itself, the virus, and now they're fearing the vaccines. So we're getting out of a fear and jumping into another fear. Is that fear worth it? This is the main question we want to start with. Dr. Nail Muhaysin, without any further ado, please, you can start presenting.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. And thank you, Sheikh Thabit, for giving me the opportunity to speak to the community. I think that it's always good to connect with everyone, share the information that we all have with our different backgrounds. And as you heard from Sheikh Thabit, this is a very, very important topic that a lot of us now are having questions about and hearing different information. So it's good to try to search for the truth. فَتَبَيَّنُوا. And inshallah, between me and Dr. Naeem today, we'll try to address as many questions as you guys have. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen and share some slides with you. Sheikh Thabit, would you allow me to share?
Sure, yes. Let me see. One second. So I'm gonna make you a host. That's the only option I see right now.
And Sheikh, can you just confirm that you can see my screen?
I can see your screen, mashallah, very clearly.
Perfect. All right. So I wanted to start by reminding everyone that between me and Dr. Naeem, this isn't an advertisement for any of the vaccines. We're not paid to tell you this information. we're not going to gain anything by actually sharing this information about the vaccine with you. We don't sell the vaccine. We can't even offer you the vaccine at this point. It's just, again, trying to share this information with everyone. So hopefully the benefit will include us all. And the other thing to keep in mind is that the field of COVID-19, the information about COVID-19 keep changing day to day because this is a novel problem. This is an emerging infectious disease. So the information that we are going to present today is valid as of the date of today. So there might be more information, more data available in the next couple of weeks. So if you see a recorded version of this presentation, for example, please just be aware of that the data in this presentation is valid as of December 23rd, 2020. So as of this date, currently there are only 2 vaccines that are available in the United States under emergency status or emergency use authorization from the FDA. And as many of you heard, these 2 vaccines are the Moderna vaccine and then the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. And both of them, so different names, different companies, but both of them use the same concept, the same technology, which is called messenger RNA. And we'll go over that briefly with you. The first question that a lot of us started with, even between doctors and scientists involved with dealing with infections, whether it's COVID-19 or other diseases and other infections. Typically, it takes 5 to 10 years for vaccines to be developed and be available on the market with information about safety and efficacy. So how come now, in less than 1 year from the beginning of this pandemic, we have a vaccine that the scientific communities are claiming or these 2 vaccines are safe and effective? Well, the answer is relatively simple. So this speed of how this vaccine became available is not necessarily a cause of concern, but more so it's actually a reason and a cause for all of us to celebrate and perhaps to thank God and also everyone who was involved with this process of making this vaccine available for us. So one of the big collaboratives that made this successful or contributed to this success is actually Operation Warp Speed. Some of you might have heard about this on the news. So what is this Operation Warp Speed? It's a collaboration that the government and the private sector and the scientists here in the US and worldwide put together with the goal of actually finding vaccines and therapeutics for COVID-19 by January 2021. So they put different resources, they gathered different scientists, and they allowed for almost limitless budget for this goal to be achieved because of the significant impact this pandemic had on everyone, whether it's government, scientific communities, economies, or also on the human level. So how did they do that? And again, not to get too technical or to go into the jargons of medical research, but typically there are different phases of trialing vaccines or therapeutics in general to see whether they're safe and effective or not. So it starts by doing what is called preclinical trials. And typically these are conducted on animal models or even cells. And then after that, it goes to the phase 1 trial. That's when you start trialing these therapeutics, in this case, the vaccine, on a small number of volunteers, healthy volunteers, so between 20 to 100. And then if there are good results in terms of safety and efficacy from those phase 1 trials, it moves to the phase 2, where you have several hundred volunteers, and then phase 3, where you have thousands of volunteers. So that's how typically the research goes. And each phase takes a significant amount of time. With this collaborative Operation Warp Speed, this process actually was able to be shortened significantly. So the things that contributed to shortening the duration of time. So if you look, for example, at this dark blue bar, so the top bar is a typical process, and the bottom one is the accelerated process. And you can see how these processes or how this duration was actually shortened with different measures. So in the table below, it tells you how each step was shortened from the typical process that takes months and years to the to the accelerated process that allowed us to have a vaccine within less than 1 year. So for the phase 1 and 2 trials, these two were combined. They benefited from information that we already have about coronaviruses. The COVID-19 virus, yes, it's a novel virus, but the family of coronaviruses is not a new family. It's something that is well recognized, and scientists have a lot of experience with it. Even for the coronaviruses that cause pandemics, such as the MERS, the Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, and SARS, the original SARS, which started over 15 years ago. So scientists had some information already about these viruses, about what could be a good target for a vaccine. They had trialed some vaccines on these viruses before. So when the COVID-19 virus came along, it wasn't completely new. The technology, the concept, some of these animal trials were already existing in place. So they put it in place directly, especially with the amount of resources in terms of money and staff that was made available for this. The other thing that probably the most significant contributor to allowing us to have vaccine now in less than 1 year is what you see here. I don't know if my cursor can be seen, but the gold rectangular here. So that one is actually the production process. So typically, if you are trialing a therapeutic or a vaccine, you have to prove that it's safe and effective before starting to produce it. This Operation Warp Speed took a bet on these vaccine candidates. Rather than waiting to see whether these vaccines would work or not, they actually allowed for them to be produced and stored. And that way, if trials show that are safe and effective, all of these vaccines that are already produced and stored, they can be rolled out into distribution right away. So rather than waiting again a year after we know that the vaccines are safe to be able to produce them in a significant amount to be able to distribute to people, that process was already taken care of while the research was ongoing. So when all of these were put together, again, we got to the situation where we have a vaccine in less than 1 year. The important piece here is that the safety processes, so the safety evaluation, that wasn't something that Operation Warp Speed or the scientists took shortcuts on. So they did not skimp on the safety evaluation. That process still took place like they typically does. So there were no changes there whatsoever. Again, the changes were just in putting the resources together, in utilizing technology, novel technology, which I'm going to talk about, the messenger RNA. So utilizing that right away and starting the production process even before the information of the safety and efficacy was available. So because of that, we have several vaccine candidates right now that are being studied. And as you heard, 2 of them are now authorized by the FDA. And these are the mRNA vaccines, the Moderna and the Pfizer one. But there are other vaccine candidates that are under trials right now. And some of them will likely be authorized by the FDA as well in the next couple of weeks or months. And again, we'll talk about these next. So how do these vaccines work? I'm not going to talk about vaccines in general. I'm going to talk about mRNA vaccines particularly, so messenger RNA vaccines. And again, trying not to get a lot in the medical jargon, but just to get a rough idea of how these things work. So this picture right here is the typical process of what happens when someone gets infected with COVID-19. So the SARS-CoV-2 virus is the virus responsible for COVID-19, gets into the human cell. So this blue circle here is the human cell. So when it gets into it, the virus releases its genome, its RNA, and it uses the mechanisms, the machines that all of our human cells have to reproduce, to make the genome, to make other copies of RNA of the virus, and also to make proteins that will envelop the RNA and make other copies of the virus. So again, the virus hijacks the cell's mechanism to replicate itself, to make genome and make protein. That's the typical life cycle of the virus. So the vaccine is actually trying to mimic that process without having the virus itself. So how does that work? rather than infecting the cell with the virus, we're actually injecting or introducing only that one piece of the genome, one piece of the RNA from the virus, and we are allowing that piece to go into the human cell. And similarly, we're allowing that piece of information, the messenger RNA, to be used by the cell's mechanisms to reproduce and make the proteins for the virus. So the end product will not be a viable virus, will not be a virus that's capable of causing disease or infecting people, but rather the byproduct of this process will be pieces of the virus. This, what we call the spike protein. So these little red spikes that you see on the virus. So only those are being produced. We're training the human cell to only produce pieces of the virus rather than complete virus. And these pieces of the virus will then train our immune system to develop immunity. So these green shapes right here that you see look like a Y shape or a Y letter. These are the antibodies. So these are the antibodies that are responsible for the immunity that's produced by the vaccine. So again, when someone hears we are injecting the bodies with the RNA, what comes to mind is genetic therapy, or that the vaccine will modify your genes. Not at all. This does not touch the DNA, does not touch the human genome, does not get into the cytoplasm, does not get into the core of the cell, but rather it gets it does not get to the nucleus. It gets only to the cytoplasm, so it does not get to the core of the cell. So it leaves the DNA alone. It's not something that should have any effect or any sustainable effect on the human genome, but rather it's just training the immune system, kind of tricking the immune system to think or to react to the proteins, to the antigens from the virus. So that's how this thing works, really mimicking or going after the same concept of a natural infection. So using these two concepts, we have these two vaccines that are authorized right now, the Pfizer one and the Moderna one. And so how are these similar? How are they different? They have a lot of things that are similar. Again, they're using the same concept, training the immune system to react to the pieces of the virus produced by the RNA, or the human cell utilizing the RNA. So that's probably the only similarity between them. And then the other things are different. Again, they're coming from two different companies, two different groups, and the dose is different between them. Both of them require 2 doses, but the duration or the timeline between the 2 doses is different. For Pfizer, it's 3 weeks. For Moderna, it's 4 weeks. And then the storage requirement is also different between both of them. So one has to be in these ultra cold freezers and -70. The other ones could be in cold storage areas, but not necessarily the ultra cold, so -20. But in terms of efficacy and safety profile, they seem almost identical. So the trials that assess the efficacy of the Pfizer vaccine showed that it is efficacious in preventing symptomatic disease in 95% of the cases. And then for the Moderna one it was 94.1%. And these are really excellent numbers. Just to put things in perspective, when we look at the flu shot, the flu vaccine, the efficacy of the flu vaccine ranges from 1 year to another, just because the flu virus mutates a lot. But then we have efficacy typically ranging between 30 to 60%. So when we say that we have a vaccine now that's efficacious in more than 90%, that's a huge success. When we say that we have this within less than 1 year, then that's an amazing success that we should all celebrate. And hopefully that will be the key for us to be to get rid of this pandemic. So again, these are the similarities and the differences between these two vaccines. Same concept, and then some of the technicalities of both of them are different. And then the ingredients for both of them are relatively similar, because it's, again, the same concept. We're using that piece of the genome from the virus, the mRNA, and then we are covering that mRNA with a delivery system. It's called nanolipids, and these are the scientific names of them. If any of you is interested in looking these ones up individually. And then there are some other chemicals that are added to it, basically as preservant, so the vaccine stays stable in these temperatures that it has to be stored in. So one thing to note here, and then I'm going to move to the next slide where you see similarly the ingredients of the Moderna vaccine. One thing to note here, that there is no microchip that everyone's talking about from Bill Gates. That doesn't exist. This is it's just, again, the genome and other chemicals that are necessary for the stability of the vaccine. The other thing that I heard from some people ask me, they were concerned whether there are any human cells or animal cells or cells from aborted fetuses in the vaccines. And again, I can assure you none of that exists, that this is what we call acellular vaccine, meaning it doesn't have any cells in it. It's just these proteins and lipids and sugars. Even that piece of the genome, the RNA, is not actually extracted from a virus. It's not taken away from a living cell. It's actually synthetically manufactured in the laboratory. So it doesn't have any human cells in it whatsoever. Other facts about the messenger RNA vaccines. So they cannot give anyone COVID-19. They can't give the disease. If you remember from the slides I mentioned before, or I showed before, the vaccine doesn't have the virus in it. It does not allow the human cell to replicate the COVID virus. So no one will be able to have the infection just because they got the vaccine. There are some vaccines that have weakened virus in them, for example, for other infections, but not for this one, not for the COVID-19 vaccine, not for the mRNA vaccines. The other thing, I also got asked that a lot. Well, if I get the vaccine, will that cause my test to be positive? Like if you got the swab from the nose and that was sent for the PCR or for the rapid test, will that falsely let the test call it as a positive result? And the answer is no, because the targets, the pieces of the virus that are being produced by the vaccine are different from the ones that are being picked up or detected by the PCR or the antigen test. The antibody test, on the other hand, so that could actually become positive after someone gets the vaccine. But the antibody test is the test that typically is being done to look to see whether someone was exposed or is immune to the infection. So it kind of makes sense for that one to turn positive after receiving the vaccine. The third point I want to emphasize here, again, I get asked that a lot. Is this gene therapy? Is this going to go to my offspring, to my children and my grandchildren? No, this does not interact with the human genome whatsoever. It does not get into the DNA. So there should be no concerns there at all. And then another point here that I already alluded to in the beginning of the presentation, just emphasizing again, these vaccines, yes, they are new. Yes, this is a novel technology, but they're not completely unknown. As I said, this technology has been studied for years and years. So that's why when COVID-19 started, scientists who had experience with it, they already jumped on the opportunity because they knew that this is something that could work. And luckily for all of us, they were true. And this seems to be effective and working right now. So mRNA vaccines were trialed for influenza before, were trialed for Zika and rabies and CMV. None of these trials ended up with a vaccine that's approved right now. But that's not because of a problem with the process. It's just, again, the resources that were made available for the efforts to make COVID-19 are not resources that were made available for other infections, just because the importance of the infection is not the same. We all know how important, how impactful this pandemic has been on the world entirely. So the most important question that all of us are asking, everyone who's considering getting the vaccine or not, is asking him or herself, are these vaccines safe? Can I go ahead and take the vaccine knowing 100% that this is a safe vaccine? Well, the answer is these vaccines seem to be safe, appear to be safe. What we know about them so far is very reassuring. However, no one can guarantee 100% safety. And I will talk a little bit about this 100% safety concept soon. But let me start by talking about what's very reassuring. Why are we, doctors and scientists, involved in the efforts of making the vaccines and distributing the vaccines? Why are we reassured about the results? For different reasons. One of them is that we have two different vaccine candidates right? So the Moderna and the Pfizer one. And both of them are coming from completely different companies. So this isn't a conspiracy that just one group of people or one scientist came with from one country. These are completely different companies that worked on completely different products. And both of them showed that they were efficacious and safe. So that eliminates, for the most part, the theoretical risk of a conspiracy or results being found by chance or something like that. So again, you have two different vaccines, two different groups, and both of them are showing good results in terms of efficacy and safety. So that's very reassuring. The other one, the trials that were made, they were significant trials. Between both of them, they enrolled over 75,000 people, 70,000 participants were enrolled in these two studies, and they monitored them. They actually are still under monitoring, everyone who received the vaccine. But we have at least data on how they did between the time they got the vaccine, at least until 2 months after. And within that period of time, none of them showed serious side effects. So none of them showed death related to the vaccine or cancer or autoimmune disorder or some other things. Many of them showed mild side effects, and that's expected. Most vaccines will lead to some side effects because, again, as it's draining the immune system will release some inflammatory mediators, inflammatory markers that may lead to fever, soreness at the injection site, redness at the injection site, fatigue, dizziness, that sort of thing. So these mild side effects did happen. They are expected, but none of them were serious enough. None of them caused any long-term complications or consequences. So that's very reassuring. The other thing that's reassuring about these vaccines is that the evaluation for safety and efficacy did not stop. It's still ongoing. It's still ongoing for the trial participants. It's also ongoing now for everyone who received the vaccine, like myself, like Dr. Naeem. Both of us got our vaccine last week. So if we show any signs or symptoms of adverse reaction, we have to report this to the CDC right away. And then that information will also be analyzed and studied. And then if there's any further concern about the vaccine, then that will be made public so everyone is aware of. So again, all of these points are reassuring and talk about excellent safety profile for these vaccines. But again, it's not 100%. And honestly, there's nothing in life 100%. If I go right now and get tap water, do I know 100% that there are no germs in it? No, I don't know that. But I know generally it is safe. I can drink it. I've had it before. I tried it before. I did okay. There's no guarantee. There's no poison in it. But again, it's unlikely for it to cause severe disease. And I know if I don't drink the water, I'm going to die of dehydration. So I'm not going to give up on that. I am going to drink water, accepting that there is a very small chance of risk of a germ in it or a poison or something like that. And that same concept applies here. So again, safety is a relative thing. When we decide about things that we do in life, we don't do it based on absolute risk and absolute safety, but rather we look at relative risk and relative safety. So the question here shouldn't be, is the vaccine 100% safe? The question should be, are these vaccines safer than COVID-19, or are they more dangerous than COVID-19? And the answer to that question is very obvious. These vaccines are much safer than someone getting COVID-19 personally, or even allowing this global pandemic of taking place. So if we look on the individual level, if someone gets COVID-19, then their chances of death, so if you look at the case fatality rate, the mortality rate from COVID-19 is 1.8%, meaning out of 1,000 people, 18 out of 1,000 people who get COVID-19, 18 of them will unfortunately die. And there is even more number of people who will need hospital admissions, a high number that will require ICU admissions. And then, yes, majority of people recover, but even the ones who recover, some of them, unfortunately, are still dealing with long-term complications and side effects even after recovery. So COVID-19 is a bad disease. For us who are dealing with it, seeing patients in the hospital, that's a no-brainer. We know the answer. We know which one is safer with the vaccine versus the infection. And then for you, I'm sure all of you personally, you know people who got the infection, who know, you probably know people who also died because of the infection. So we all have to be careful, and we should choose the safer option here, which is the vaccine. This image here is something I always refer to. There is nothing 100% safe. We always have to choose the lesser of two evils, and sometimes more than two evils. This is a picture that depicting the trolley problem, something that's very known in the world of ethics. So, and then even when we look globally, are the vaccines safer than continuing the spread of COVID-19 pandemic? And the answer is yes, they are. They are safer. This pandemic has impacted all of us significantly. Look around you. You can't go to a restaurant. You can't go to Maideen to attend khutbah. You can't attend the Jum'ah prayer. Look at the numbers of cases worldwide. Look at the number of deaths. People we love, dear to us. They, children, elderly, men, women are dying, are getting really sick because of this. So it's in everyone's interest to stop this pandemic. And these vaccines seem to be offering the safest option for all of us to reach to herd immunity, to reach to hopefully the end of this pandemic. This picture I put here is another analogy I use when someone is asking me about the vaccine. So if someone is drowning, if God forbid, one of you is drowning, and a person shows up and they extend their hand to pull you out of danger and get you to safety, would you grab their hand, or would you tell them, hey, are you sure 100% that your hand is clean, doesn't have any germ on it? Did you make wudu? Did you wash 3 times? All of that? Or would you just grab it and grasp on it and just get out to safety? I think the answer is obvious. If you're drowning, you would reach for that hand that will pull you to safety, even if there was this very small risk. Well, then maybe there's germ on it, or the person who's offering their hand, maybe they did not make wudu 5 minutes before they did that. So again, it's all about relative risk. It's all about our options here, and the options are not we're going to be safe or we take the vaccine. The options are we continue with this pandemic or we get the vaccine. And the vaccine, luckily for all of us, seem to be highly safe and efficacious for what we know, at least for what we know about it so far. So I'm going to stop here, and I apologize for taking longer than I thought I would. And then I will allow for some questions and answers. There are some that Sheikh Thabit shared with us already, and my colleague Dr. Naeem has actually put some answers too. So I'm gonna have her unmute her line and start with these questions and answers. And then after that, we'll look in the chat box to see if there are any other additional questions that were not addressed. So hopefully between me and her, we can address. And then even if Sheikh Thabit says it's okay, we can maybe unmute some lines and have people ask questions. So I'm going to start by introducing my colleague, Dr. Fawzia Naeem, who's actually a sister and a dear friend and a teacher of mine. And she is going to go through some of these questions and answers.
Thank you, Dr. Mason.
Thank you, Dr. Naeem.
Thank you, Dr. Mason, for a nice introduction, and Sheikh Sabit. So I'll start with some of the questions that were already shared by us by some of the member in the community. So I'll start with first question is that was put together, as you heard from Dr. Mason, about herd immunity. So what do we mean by herd immunity? So it means that when majority of the population is immune to a virus, then that population develops an immunity, and that provides protection to those who are not immune to the disease. So how much do we need those population to be immune to protect the other population who are not immune is depending upon how contagious the disease is or the virus is. Majority of the time, you need at least 50 to 90% of the population to have that immunity in order to protect other non-immune population. And as we are seeing with this COVID-19 infection, it's highly contagious. So we are assuming that how would we achieve with that COVID-19 virus? So there are only two ways to achieve the herd immunity, as we talked about. Either you infect the large proportion of population to get that herd immunity, which is not an ideal situation, as Dr. Mason mentioned, that the amount of the problem this virus is causing, we're losing our loved ones, and so much morbidity and patient lingering with this disease. So this is not the case that we are looking into it. So what other ways that we can achieve that herd immunity is by getting a vaccine, so get protection through the vaccine. And this is where we are actually pushing hard and making people convinced that, that we should get this vaccine in order to achieve this herd immunity. So the other question that people ask is, if I already had a COVID-19 infection and have recovered, so do I still need to get vaccinated once it's available? Definitely, yeah, because the studies have shown that the natural immunity from the COVID-19 infection may not last longer. And we are still learning about this virus, right? We don't know, because studies are still going on, and we don't know how long this immunity lasts. And based on that, there's a chance that you can get reinfected with the same virus again. The thing that will change if you are reinfected is the priority of receiving the vaccine. So you may not be in the first group that is receiving the vaccine. Probably your number will go down a little bit as compared to other patient population. Okay, Nile, can you move the slide? Yeah. So can COVID-19 vaccine give you a COVID-19 infection? And Dr. Mason mentioned about that, no, this is not a live virus. And it's basically using just a genomic part, a part of that, the gene of that virus to actually make the protein that will initiate the immune response and make us provide us a protection to this virus. What is the cost of both Pfizer and Moderna vaccine if the people have no insurance? So just to make this clear, that no individual, regardless of whether they're uninsured or have private insurance or Medicare or Medicaid, will have to pay out of pocket, because this is all covered at the federal level. Okay. The other question is, will we need to take COVID-19 vaccine every year like flu vaccine? And we don't know at this moment, because we don't know how long this immunity lasts with these vaccines, because we just have only 2 months data at this point. But definitely the patient who have enrolled in this study, they will be followed for at least 2 years. And by following those patients, we will know, okay, whether they are declining immunity in 6 months or whether we need to readdress that. And also we know that this virus is changing also, and then we don't know whether how much it will be efficacious, how much change, just like a flu vaccine, Dr. Mason mentioned, that it keeps on changing every year. So every year we need a new vaccine for flu. But for this virus, as I mentioned, we're still learning. We don't have much data at this point. So far, only 2 months data we have available. So we don't know whether we need a yearly vaccine for this one. How do we really know if COVID-19 vaccine are safe? And Dr. Mason has mentioned it very clearly, with examples. I just want to reinforce that whenever these trials they run around, there's a safety committee monitoring that watches the population who are receiving the vaccine. And as soon as they develop the side effects, that trial gets on hold until that safety committee reviews it and makes sure that this is not related to vaccine, or if it's a serious event or not. And this vaccine also went through the same process. And even after the trial is completed, the FDA carefully reviews all the safety data from the clinical trial. The Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices also reviews those safety data before recommending any COVID-19 vaccine for use. And as we mentioned, that FDA and CDC is continuously monitoring the safety of COVID-19 vaccine. Me and Dr. Mason, we got the vaccine, and we are getting this. We have this notification comes every day, and where we have to document our daily symptoms that we are developing. So if anyone who will develop any symptoms, that will be documented and will reach to these sites. And this is how the data will come out, even with this whole population. And we will know more about this vaccine. What are the side effects? And Dr. Mason mentioned that the side effect that commonly seen is all that's seen with the other vaccines, The most common side effect that all the people are experiencing or mentioning is pain at the injection site, which is commonly reported. You may get fever, fatigue, headache, and body ache, joint pain for a day or so. Long-term side effect, we still unknown. As I mentioned, we're still learning about this vaccine. But in that trial, there were not many long-term effects that were mentioned or reported. Okay, so how many shots needed and why? And we all mentioned that nearly all COVID-19 vaccine that has been studied in the United States require 2 shots at this moment. First shot will activate the system and helping it recognize the virus, and the second shot will strengthen the immune system and it will enable us to fight against the virus if we come across that virus. And as I mentioned that CDC is working with public health, healthcare providers, and other partners to make sure that this vaccine is easily available to all population, and the cost should not be a barrier for those. The other question is, can I stop wearing masks after I get the vaccine? The recommendation is no, because we know that these vaccines, after getting these vaccines, it takes time to build immunity, and some may be non-responder. And the question here comes at, okay, either we are preventing the illness or versus we are preventing the transmission of this disease. So recommendation at this moment is to continue to wear the mask until we achieve this herd immunity and we're able to protect the remainder of the population who are not able to get this vaccine. So the goal is to achieve the herd immunity. So by then, until we reach that point, which we don't know at this point, we should continue to practice the same precautions that we are doing at this moment. Let me see. Okay. Who should not get COVID-19 vaccine? The recommendation from the CDC side is from the CDC is the people who have known history of severe allergy reaction to component of the vaccine. The component that Dr. Mason mentioned, just pay attention to those. If you have any severe allergy to those components, please talk to your physician before getting this vaccine. And also, we have not much data for children under age 16. But the trial are continuing at this moment involving the children, pregnant women, and immunocompromised hosts. And soon I think that should also be available because that have already been initiated. So these vaccines are not approved for children under 16 years of age. Can these vaccines cause infertility? The answer is no, because no effect of fertility or pregnancy in animal study was seen in the preclinical studies. Also, Dr. Mason mentioned that, and that question come across a lot, like does these vaccines contain the fetal cell? And as we mentioned, they are synthesized in the lab. So, and they are acellular vaccines, so no cellular body was used in the building of these vaccines. Will this vaccine change medicine? And that was also mentioned in the presentation, that these genes, it contains messenger RNA, is a part of the gene of the virus that does not enter into the nucleus and it stays outside the nucleus in the cytoplasm. And as soon as it passes on the information, instruction to our cellular component to make the proteins, which could initiate the immune response, that gene is actually destroyed by our enzymes in our cells. So it does not even linger around there and does not enter into our nucleus. So definitely this vaccine does not change our genes. Does these vaccine contain microchips? And as Dr. Mason mentioned, no. And will these vaccines be mandatory? At this moment, no. And remember that we are still learning, we're still going through all this process, but at this moment, it's not mandatory, it's voluntary for everybody. And also the question is, how long does immunity last after receiving this vaccine, which is also unknown, and trials are still going on. The population who have received the vaccine will be monitored for 2 years, and the time is going to tell whether we need the booster dose again in 6 months or 1 year or 2 years, still unknown and still more to come. That's it from my side.
So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and look in the chat box to see if we got any questions. I see at least one. And Actually, there are no questions here in the
So,
chat.
Assalamu alaikum. Yes, Dr. Muhaisin, I do have a question that came to me privately in the chat box. So I can take it from here, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Thank you for sharing this wonderful presentation. Actually, you guys answered a lot of questions. You guys answered questions that some people forwarded to me, and actually questions that I had personally. Questions like, how long does it take to show side effects? I believe that was answered. Maybe so far we don't know. Is that was? Can someone? Can one of our physicians please confirm that question? How long does it take to show side effects? I don't want to say something wrong. Oh, are you guys not able to mute yourself? Oh, I'm sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I unmuted.
Yeah,
let me unmute everyone so that if anyone wants to tap in, ask a question.
I'm just going to start by answering this question.
Yeah.
So the side effects of vaccine in general.
Yes, doctor. Yes. One more time. I'm sorry.
Briefly, there's something to repeat. The side effects from vaccines are usually things that we see right away within a few days after receiving the vaccine. To have a delayed reaction to the vaccine is somewhat unusual in the world of vaccinology. So even when we talk about serious side effects, typically these things go up fairly quickly. And in these trials, and so far we have not seen any. There are a handful of cases of severe allergic reactions that some of you probably heard about in the news, and these are being monitored. But besides that, we're not aware of anything long-term. So typically, again, these side effects will show up fairly quickly. And as you heard from me and from Dr. Naeem, typically they are mild, include something like fever, reaction at the site of the injection, sometimes fatigue, headache, tiredness, and so forth.
MashaAllah, Jazakallah khair. Another question that was answered, just to confirm for everyone, does the Pfizer vaccine mess up your DNA? That was answered by both of our dear physicians, mashallah, that it does not get all the way to the nucleus, right? It gets inside of the cytoplasm, but that does not become part of your, because people say it's a protein and then it's added to your actual DNA. Is that what it's not added to your actual DNA, right?
No. So again, it's like you got an email. An email has an instructions for you. You read it, you performed the instructions, and then you deleted the email. That's exactly what happens.
Gotcha.
The email does not leave, that website and go into the hardware, the hard drive of your computer and take it over. It just does not work that way.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Okay, so MashaAllah, we're getting a lot of questions. So I'm gonna leave the paper that I had and just jump into the people's questions that are fresh, MashaAllah, came right out of their hearts. What if you have COVID infection and being asymptomatic, then you take the vaccine? What is the scenario in this case?
So if someone has or had the COVID-19 infection, whether they are symptomatic or not, it's okay for them to get the vaccine. So there is no harm anticipated by them getting the vaccine.
Does it help cure?
Does it help or not? So cure? No, it does not work to cure. But does it help someone in developing more immunity so they don't get reinfected, for example? Because reinfection with COVID-19, so getting COVID-19 more than once, is possible. There are cases described with that. Yes, they're not common, but it could happen. So getting the vaccine is actually recommended right now, even if someone had the infection before, because we don't know how long the immunity lasts from natural infection. We don't know longer than from the immunity that someone would get from getting the vaccine. We don't know if it's shorter. And because, again, we're dealing under emergency situation, we want to err on the side of caution. We want to provide as much protection as possible. That's even if someone has or had the infection before, it is still recommended for them to get the vaccine. The timeline of when they can get the vaccine relative to when they were diagnosed is something that we can get into in details again, but I think that will be addressed on a case-by-case basis, because that's an area of debate.
And Sheikh Sabit, I want to add one more thing. Remember, the people who are the asymptomatic people with COVID-19 virus are the ones that are the more threat to the population because they can transmit the virus. So I think those are the ones that we are trying to target with the vaccination in order to prevent the distribution of the virus to,
MashaAllah, yeah. The other question I'm going to jump to is you say there are, that's not the question. You say there are lipids. Where do they come from?
So these are synthesized in the lab. I don't know the exact process, but again, it's laboratory produced vaccine with all of its component. It's not something that's naturally acquired.
MashaAllah. Now that's a question from me, actually just came to my mind. We've heard of a new strand in the UK, right, of the virus. Is the new vaccines are not going to work on that new strand? Is it mutating and then the vaccines all of a sudden are not going to work if they mutate?
So that's a possibility. We don't know right now. They're actually conducting trials that look into that possibility to see whether this new mutated strain does it have less susceptibility to the vaccine or not. The return is that when scientists develop vaccines, they choose a conserved piece of the viral genome, a conserved piece of the viral RNA that doesn't typically get mutated very easily, doesn't get affected by mutations. And based on that target, based on that piece that is conserved, they make the vaccine. So their efforts are not futile. Again, a lot of time and work and effort and money went into producing the vaccine. It will be relatively stupid to lose it right away. So that's why they choose something that's typically conserved. So it's unlikely for this new strain to have a negative effect on the vaccine, but that's not confirmed yet. It's being studied.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to go back to the questions. We're, mashallah, a lot of questions are coming in. I hope we're going to be able to answer all of them. So let's, I'm going to ask our dear brother and sister physicians, mashallah, just to try to answer briefly because we want to try to really not fail anyone, inshallah. What is the percentage of people need to be vaccinated to reach herd immunity? Can we reach herd immunity with making the vaccine mandatory? I believe that's a question for Dr. Naeem.
So as we talked about, depending upon the contagiousness of the virus, and this virus is very highly contagious. So at least we need 70 to 80% of the patient population to be vaccinated in order to achieve the herd immunity.
We should be able to.
Yes. And then remember that it's hard to tell, you don't have to make it mandatory. Even if you achieve with the 80% of the population, if you achieve the vaccination of those population, I think you should be able to achieve the herd immunity. And that's the goal, here. That's why they're not making mandatory, it's voluntary, but people are getting a lot of education, and Dr. Mason is trying his best, educating the community, educating the hospital people, and then because of a lot of politics going on with this vaccine too. And the way that it has developed so quickly, people have a lot of questions, a lot of concerns. But I think that's the goal that we have to do to ensure and make people agree to get this vaccine.
Dr. Nasim Isa, are you trying to tap in? I'm sorry. You want to say something, Doctor? Because that was a question from Dr.
Yeah, that was my question. So my question was, can you can you make the 80% of the population vaccinated without making the vaccine mandatory? That was my other question.
Yeah, okay.
If I comment on this, excuse me, Dr. Naeem. So there are different strategies that will be deployed to get to herd immunity, to get to acceptance rate of the vaccine close to the 70 or 80% that's required to herd immunity. Mandating the vaccine is one of the last resort, measures that we can get to. And we know that this is a measure that will be extremely difficult, that will be extremely challenged. It's not within the jurisdictions of many counties or many states. So I don't think these vaccines will be mandatory, at least not nationally and not universally. They might be mandated for healthcare workers or for someone who works in a nursing home, or again, workers, essential workers, but I don't see this being mandated universally for the general population. That will be extremely, extremely difficult and very challenging. And I think we have other measures to increase the acceptance rate of the vaccine without mandating. And I am hopeful that with communication, with messaging, such as this communication, this talk that we have today, it will be one of these measures that would help everyone understand the vaccines better and hopefully accept these vaccines once they are available.
MashaAllah. Thank you. Doctor, the next question, what is the process to get the vaccine when it's available for the public?
You will have to connect with your primary care doctor at that point.
Through the primary care, okay.
There will be advertisement of how to get it. I know from brothers and sisters who are pharmacists that also many pharmacies are preparing to have these vaccines distributed through their pharmacies as well. My brother works at Walgreens, and they are getting ready to have these vaccines.
Mm-hmm. Next question, what percentage of antibodies are formed after first dose?
Dr. Naim, do you have that? I don't have the exact numbers, but I know that the second dose is what's required.
Yeah, so in the trial, what happened was we don't have the numbers of how much percentage, but we did find that in the Pfizer vaccine, that after first dose, there was the efficacy dropped down to 52% in the patient that were enrolled in that study. And then after the second dose, the efficacy went up to 94-95%. Yeah, so there was seen a decline in the antibodies in those patients, but we don't know the actual percentage numbers at this point here.
Okay, thank you. Did someone want to speak publicly? Brother Mahmoud, I saw your hand up. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, the question is on the 2 doses. Are they equal in amount and strength? And the other follow-up is the side effect. Is it going to happen for sure or not necessarily? And then if you do have them, can you take over-the-counter medications?
I can answer this if you allow me, Dr. Naim. So the 2 doses, so if you get, let's say you get the Pfizer vaccine, the 2 doses, the first and the second, are exactly the same. Same volume, same amount, just again, the 3-week difference. The dose between Pfizer and Moderna is different. So which vaccine you get offered or you choose to take, then the dose will be different. But if you stick to one vaccine, again, everyone will have to stick to one vaccine, then the dose between the first one and the second is the same. These side effects do not necessarily happen. Some people have them, some do not. From what Dr. Naim shared with me, she had a little bit of discomfort after her vaccine. I had nothing, basically. And again, I know some people have more side effects, others do not. So it's not something that has to happen 100%, but there is a good likelihood of it happening.
If it happened, I'm saying, can you take over-the-counter medication to counteract the side effect?
Yes. Yes, there should be no problem with that. So if you have fever, you have headache, you have pain, you can take acetaminophen, Tylenol, or ibuprofen, Motrin, and that should help with it.
Can I just quickly, the question on the elderly, if they're 90 years or over and they have the MM cancer, taking medications, Polamist, whatever it's called, can they take this vaccine?
The answer is yes. So even people with cancer, even people with other comorbid conditions, other diseases, diabetes, cancer, autoimmune disorders, they should be offered the vaccine. At this point, we don't have information about negative side effects, particularly for that population. But again, more information to follow on this. Dr. Naim, do you have anything to add about patients with cancers or other comorbid conditions and availability of the vaccine?
No, I think I agree with Dr. Mason that the recommendation is at this moment, even we don't have data for pregnant patients and also for immunocompromised hosts, the recommendation is to offer the vaccine to them, and the provider should discuss the risk and benefit. And by the time it will be available, we will already have some data available for those patient population within 1 or 2 months. Yeah, because the trial has already started. Yeah.
Thank you.
Jazakumullah khair. Once you have COVID, how long do the symptoms last?
It varies from one patient to another. There are some patients that are completely asymptomatic. They don't have any symptoms. There are others that have symptoms for a day or two. There are others that are unfortunately could be really sick, staying in the hospital or in the ICU for months at a time before they get better.
Yeah. Right. We have the same question that I asked, will vaccine protect against the new strain of virus? That was answered, I believe. The next question is, do recipients have option to choose between mRNA and Pfizer vaccine? That's a good question. In an area of, or do we have a choice?
It will be difficult to answer. So depending on where you get your vaccine, if you go somewhere and they only have Moderna, then that's what they have. You don't have a choice. I can give you an example. At Valley Children's Hospital, where me and Dr. Naeem practice, we have both vaccines, the Moderna and the Pfizer. And it's just for the ease of scheduling and administration, that option is not allowed to choose which one you want, where they are looked at as if they're practically the same. So whatever is available in the clinic on that day, you get. You don't get to choose one versus the other. But again, that's more of a preference of the site of the clinic or the pharmacy given the vaccine. They may elect to give someone the choice. At this point, it's hard to tell.
Did any of each vaccines showed more harm or side effects in those 2 months that has been studied?
No, they were almost identical in terms of their adverse effects and the rate of these adverse effects. And then the efficacy, as you saw in the slides, was almost the same. 95% for Pfizer, 94.1% for Moderna.
Yeah, mashallah. Dr. Naeem Isa, you want to add something before I move on? We have 5 more questions probably. We're going to try, inshallah. We're already a little bit over time, but we can go maybe another 10 minutes because this is such an important topic. Okay, because I see some hands up. Khan, I asked you to unmute. Khan, you can speak.
I need to know if you have COVID infection and you're sick and you got the vaccine a few days before when you did not know that you already had COVID infection, then can you get the antibody infusion, the monoclonal, or you cannot because you got the vaccine?
That's an interesting scenario. I don't know the answer. Dr. Naeem, any idea? That's actually a good
question. Yeah. No, we don't know because vaccine has just rolled in. So we don't know whether the patient who are sick and who have received the vaccine, whether they are eligible to get the monoclonal or not. There was no contraindication or anything, put in, but we have to look into that detail. Yeah, we don't know at this moment.
That's a good point, and thank you for raising that, because I'm sure we're going to get asked that, Dr. Naeem, at some point. So I'd rather find the answer now rather than having to look for the answer at 2 a.m.
That's all. So let me move on. Monoclonal antibody infusion, actually I meant, this is from Khan again. Maybe this is old, I'm sorry. How soon vaccines start producing antibodies in body? A lot of questions about antibodies.
I think the question was how soon after receiving the vaccine the antibodies get developed. So they start right away, but it gets the peak. You get the protective antibodies, average of 14 days, 2 weeks after receiving the dose.
So actually we're done. We're done. I saw 4 messages coming in, but I think that's the last one. Sometimes people type a word or like just something that is not related and it counts. Okay. Any more questions, brothers, sisters, publicly?
I see someone raising their hand.
Yeah. Brother Mahmoud. One more time, and then we can move on. We can also then have Brother Rauf after that.
Okay. The question is now on the 2 manufacturers. They require the after 21 days or 28 days. And the question is that the minimum from 21 days after or exactly at 21 or 28?
It's the minimum. So you can go longer.
Okay. Yeah, got it. Okay, good. Thank you.
MashaAllah. Brother Rauf, you had a question. Brother Rauf, are you with us? Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can you hear me? Okay. Assalamu alaikum, doctors, and thank you for spending your time with us. But my question is, once we are infected with this disease, which is in my case, how long should I wait before I can actually take the medication, the antivirus?
And vaccine, brother, or the medication?
The medication. That one of the questions was, can we take the medication once we've been infected already? And you had said yes. My question is, how long once we've been infected? I've been infected for going on 2 weeks. I'm not sure if I still have it or not. I still have the symptoms of it, but how long do I wait before I can receive that injection?
So I hope that this addresses your question. So there is a therapy, a treatment that's available for someone who gets diagnosed with COVID-19, especially if they have symptoms and symptoms that are mild to moderate, not requiring going into the hospital. And this treatment is called monoclonal antibody. It's similar to what President Trump got. So these usually are administered in the emergency room or at an infusion center. And the purpose of it is to stop the progression of the infection, to decrease the chances of the infection developing into a severe disease requiring hospital or ICU admission. When these treatments are used, their best use comes in when they are administered within 10 days of the development of the symptoms. So if your symptoms have been going on more than that, 14 days, I don't think this is a treatment that would be suitable for you because it's unlikely to work at this point. You may just deal with the side effects from it. So in your situation, if you feel that you're already getting better, it's just you still have some mild symptoms here and there, then you continue with the supportive therapy, which is hydration, pain killers if needed, fever-reducing medications if needed, rest, and so forth. But there will be no need for treatment. And again, I'm giving this answer as a general answer. If there's something specific, then I urge you to speak to your regular doctor about this so you get a more specific answer to your question.
Inshallah. May Allah cure your brother Rauf, inshallah, give you full shifa, full recovery, and may he protect everyone, inshallah, who's listening, and the Muslim community and the people from getting infected, inshallah. Okay, so we got in two more questions, and I think we can wrap up after this. What is, Brother Ilyas is asking, what is the interval between the 2 doses?
So for both vaccine, one is 21 days and other one is 28 days.
I see.
Yeah.
Another question from Sister Ferouz, I believe. What density of exposure to COVID-19 required so you get infected? I believe the question is basically like, like what level of exposure do you have to? Yeah.
Yeah. So as you could see, it's unknown, but it's a very highly contagious virus. You know, you don't know, you're going to the grocery store and you come across a person, and then you can get, even people I've heard who have taken such a great precautions, wearing masks, washing hands, and they're isolating themselves, but still have got infection. But they may have come across somebody that was already carrying the virus or was highly contagious. Yeah, so very highly contagious. We don't know how much amount you need, but you can get infected. The recommendation is to be away 6 feet, right? Social distancing and everything. Yeah, so
yeah, mashallah.
It's hard to tell.
So people are writing more questions. Can steam be highly effective for COVID patients? And if you can also add to that, like things that we hear about, zinc, calcium, C, like these treatments that people are talking about, are they really effective? But starting with the steam.
Nile cannot talk, please.
Oh.
Okay, I'm unmuted now. Apologies. my daughter was screaming, so I muted, and then I wasn't able to unmute.
I allowed everybody to unmute. So,
Perfect. So luckily for us, despite how vicious this virus is, it's relatively easy to kill outside of the body, whether it's high temperature, such as steam, or any detergent at home. So bleach, Clorox, that sort of thing. So and even the alcohol or the hand sanitizers, these are things that can kill the virus readily. So that's where this recommendation of hand hygiene and frequent cleaning of high touch surface areas comes from. So I think that addresses that question. Was there another part of the question?
Does it, Sister Nabila, does it address the question? Or did you mean like breathing steam? I don't know. I'm not sure. For COVID patients. She's saying COVID patients.
Okay, so trying to decrease the level of
that's something I heard of
in the body with steam. I don't think that helps. I'm not aware of steam or any other method that you can at home or even in the hospital to try to decrease the level of the virus, other than some of the therapies being used, antiviral therapies or immune therapies.
I see. Is there a plan to have some kind of certificate or a badge for people who will take the vaccine to make it easier for the population to know how is more safe? That, basically I took the vaccine. Maybe they're gonna make stickers you can put on the back of your car. I took the vaccine, right? We're gonna see that very soon.
That's a good strategy for communicating and spreading the word of the vaccine. So when we get the vaccine, or when everyone gets the vaccine, they get a card actually that has their name and the vaccine ID and what they got and when, and that serves as a form of certificate of them receiving the vaccine. But then in terms of announcing that or advertising that, I think that's something that all of us can do. Yes, wear a sticker or put it on your car or something like that, just to encourage people, because it's in our best interest, all of us, for this to disappear, this pandemic to disappear. And seems like the vaccine is the safest solution we have so far.
MashaAllah, Jazakumullah khair. Thank you so much, Dr. Naeem, Dr. Muhsin, for joining us tonight. I'm sure people are just so glad and happy that you both came in and answered so many questions, so many concerns, so many uncertainties. MashaAllah. Do you have final advice for us that we can also transmit for our families?
So I have something to just remind everyone. We are all very hopeful about the vaccine. We think that, again, it's going to be the key for us to get out of this pandemic, this terrible situation. However, the vaccine is not an immediate solution to what's going on. If you look at the numbers right now, if you heard the news, Fresno area, California in general, we have the highest rate of spread of the pandemic at this point. So please, brothers and sisters, all of us, we have to be careful, trying to stay home as much as possible, particularly if someone is sick or showing signs or symptoms of the infection. The other thing, if you have to leave the house for work, to get groceries, to do whatever you need to do, please wear a mask, stick to social distancing, frequent hand hygiene, cleaning of high-touch surface areas. All of these things are important, especially now. I know we have long weekends, Christmas and the New Year holidays are coming up. Typically, these are times for people to congregate, to get together, family and friends. I fear that this might be dangerous this year, and we just have to keep in mind the level of transmission in the community. And God forbid, you don't want to be the one spreading an infection to someone who will get severely ill because of it and require ICU admission, or even, God forbid, die because of it. So please, brothers and sisters, just be careful. These next few weeks are going to be critical for us to overcome this current wave. And then hopefully after that, the vaccine will get us beyond this pandemic, because we all miss the normal life that we had before. And it takes collective effort from all of us to get to it again.
MashaAllah. Thank you. I'm getting a lot of thank you messages. Dr. Naeem, final word for us.
Yeah, I would agree with Dr. Mason, safe practice, wear masks, and pray that soon the vaccine comes to the community and available for the community, so that we can all, get out of this pandemic and then be together and enjoy our time as we used to do it, and enjoy our Jummah prayers too.
Inshallah. Looking forward to that. Barakallah fikum. Thank you so much. We're getting messages. Thank you for both doctors who presented an excellent scientific presentation. Thank you, Brother Thabit. Important topic, a very important topic. Thank you, everyone, for this valuable information. Very appreciated. You guys came in the right time. Alhamdulillah, we provided this program in the right time. People are, very thankful for that. Jazakumullah khair. May Allah reward you. And by the way, if anyone needs, based on the information that Dr. Nail Muhaisin gave me, you can communicate with both of our doctors directly to their email. So if you need their email, just please let me know and I can send it to you privately, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone.
Wa alaikum assalam.